You say you don't want the world, only the world distilled into one person. But that desire is a paradox with a heartbeat. It pulses beneath your ribcage like a question mark that refuses to straighten into certainty. It keeps you awake at 3 a.m., wondering if what you're asking for is too much, too specific, too impossibly refined. You've tried to explain it to friends who look at you with gentle confusion, who suggest you're being too picky, too idealistic, too unwilling to compromise. But they don't understand. What you really want is not scale, it's concentration. Not abundance, but essence. You don't want to collect experiences like stamps and a passport. You don't want to know 100 people superficially or love a dozen people adequately. You want one person who contains multitudes, not because they've tried to be everything, but because their authentic self happens to hold galaxies. You want a soul that carries continents the way a poet carries metaphors, lightly, but with meaning. Someone who's been broken in Barcelona and healed in Berlin, who learned something essential about themselves in a small town whose name you'll spend years learning to pronounce, whose stories unfold like maps, revealing territories of experience that shape them into someone worth the journey of knowing. But it's not about the places. It's never about the places. It's about how those places live inside them now. How Morocco taught them patience. How that winter in Edinburgh taught them solitude isn't the same as loneliness. How losing someone they loved in Prague taught them that grief is just love, with nowhere to go. You want someone whose laugh holds summer. That specific kind of laughter that sounds like open windows and reckless hope. The kind that makes you want to bottle it, save it for February when the world feels gray and you've forgotten that joy exists without effort. A laugh that doesn't perform or apologize, but simply erupts like fireworks, unapologetic in its brightness. Whose silences know winter. Because not all silence is absence. Some silence is presence, concentrated into its purest form. You want someone who understands that sometimes the most intimate thing two people can share is the comfort of not speaking. Whose quiet has texture and weight. Whose stillness doesn't feel like withdrawal, but like snow falling, soft, inevitable, beautiful in its accumulation. Whose doubts feel like monsoon clouds gathering. You want someone who doesn't pretend to have it all figured out. Someone whose uncertainty has weather patterns you can learn to read. When you see those clouds forming on their horizon, you don't run from the storm. You know it will pass. You know the rain is necessary. You know how to hold them while they pour. Whose touch has the accuracy of sunrise finding the exact window pane it loves. This is what kills you, the specificity of it. How their hand knows exactly where to land on your lower back when you're anxious. How their fingers find the knot in your shoulder you didn't know was there. How they touch your face like they're reading Braille, learning your features through their fingertips, as if they might need to find you in the dark. You want a mind that opens like an atlas, yet chooses only one route toward you. Someone intelligent enough to go anywhere, curious enough to want everything, capable enough to achieve anything, and yet they fold up all those maps and choose the singular journey of understanding you. Not because you've trapped them or limited them, but because knowing you deeply feels more expansive than knowing the world shallowly. You want the world, yes, but not in its sprawling confusion. You want it crystallized, clarified, curated into a single presence that feels like home, a human prism where every color lives quietly inside one body. Someone who contains the red of passion and the blue of melancholy and the gold of joy and the purple of mystery, all refracted through the singular lens of who they are. A person who isn't everything to everyone, but everything to you. This is what you've been trying to articulate for years. You don't want someone universally beloved or widely admired or capable of charming every room they enter. You want someone specifically, peculiarly, particularly matched to you. Someone whose everything aligns with your everything in a way that feels like fate, but is actually just profound compatibility. And here's what no one tells you. This desire is not selfish. It's not evidence of your inability to love broadly or your failure to appreciate the complexity of other human beings. It's evidence of your capacity for depth, your refusal to settle for surface-level connection, your understanding that some souls are meant to know each other in languages that exclude everyone else. The world is vast and full of beautiful people, but you only have one life, one heart, one chance to love with the full force of your being. And you refuse to dilute that force by spreading it thin across people who only half understand you. You want concentration, essence, the world in a single person. And you won't apologize for it. The greatest romantics possess hearts that know how to die the most glorious of deaths. Not the brutal kind, not the collapse, not the shattering that leaves you unable to recognize yourself in the mirror, but the kind of death that resembles a candle surrendering to dawn, a soft extinguishing, offered willingly because something brighter has arrived. Their hearts die in metamorphosis. Every time they fall in love, something in them has to end. The version of themselves that didn't know this person, the life they were building before this person arrived and rearranged the architecture, the future they'd imagined that didn't include this specific face, this particular laugh, this unprecedented way of being seen. In relinquishments, they die to the fantasy they held of how love should look, to the checklist they carried of traits their person should possess, to the timeline they'd constructed of when and how love should arrive. They surrender the script and let reality write something better, stranger, more terrifying, and more beautiful than anything they could have planned. In choosing to love, even when love is a blade and a blessing stitched together. Because real love is never just one thing. It's not pure joy without complications. It's not simple happiness without fear. It's the most wonderful and terrible thing that can happen to a person. Wonderful because it makes you feel alive. Terrible because it gives fate something to take away. They understand that to feel deeply is to be perpetually reborn. Every significant love asks you to become someone new, not to lose yourself, but to expand yourself, to add rooms to the house of your identity, to learn languages of intimacy you didn't know existed, to develop capacities for patience, vulnerability, courage that lay dormant until this person arrived and activated them. And that every rebirth requires a small ceremonial ending. You cannot become who you need to be for this love without releasing who you were before it. The person who protected their heart with cynicism, the person who confused independence with invulnerability, the person who thought they could love safely, strategically, without risk. That person has to die. Gently, honorably, with gratitude for how they kept you safe until it was time to be brave. A letting go of illusions. The illusion that love should be easy if it's right. The illusion that the right person won't trigger you, or challenge you, or reflect back parts of yourself you'd rather not see. The illusion that you can have intimacy without vulnerability, closeness without exposure, love without the risk of devastating loss. A burial of old versions of themselves. All the selves you've been before this love. The heartbroken one, the cautious one, the one who swore they'd never give anyone this much power again. You don't forget them. You don't pretend they never existed, but you lay them to rest with ceremony, with respect for what they survived, with permission to stop surviving and start living. A quiet laying to rest of the tenderness that no longer fits. Because not all tenderness is healthy. Some tenderness is actually fear disguised as care. Some gentleness is actually avoidance disguised as kindness. Some softness is actually self-protection disguised as vulnerability. When you love deeply, you have to release the false tenderness and develop the real kind. The kind that tells the truth even when it's uncomfortable. The kind that asks for what it needs even when it feels scary. The kind that stays even when running would be easier. Romantics die in fragments, yes. A little death every time they choose vulnerability over safety. Every time they stay in a difficult conversation instead of leaving. Every time they reveal something shameful and wait to see if they'll still be loved. Every time they risk the pain of being fully known, but they also resurrect in astonishing forms, with new rooms in the soul, spaces that didn't exist before this love created the need for them. A room for the kind of joy you didn't know was possible. A room for the kind of pain that only comes from caring this much. A room for the specific tenderness this person evokes in you. New languages of longing. Before them, you thought you knew what desire was, but they taught you new vocabularies, new syntax for need, new grammar for want, ways of missing someone that feel like a physical ache, ways of wanting someone that transcend the physical entirely. New ways of carrying both ache and awe in the same breath. This is the gift the greatest romantics possess, the ability to hold contradiction, to feel the terror and the beauty simultaneously, to know that loving this much means losing this much someday, and to love anyway, to walk around with a heart that hurts from how full it is. The glorious death is never the end. It is the toll one pays for loving in full color. Black and white love is safe. Grayscale love is manageable. But full color? Full color love costs everything. It demands you show up as your most alive self, which means also your most vulnerable self, which means the self that can be hurt most deeply. It is the price of a heart that refuses to love halfway. Some people love in increments, holding back reserves in case things don't work out. Some people love with escape routes planned, with one foot always near the door. Some people love with the logic of diversified investments, never putting all their emotional capital in one place. But romantics refuse this reasonable approach. They go all in. They love with their entire being. They risk everything on one person, one connection, one chance at the kind of love that becomes the central story of their life. And yes, this means they die more gloriously, because they live more gloriously. Every death, every ending of who they were before, happens in technicolor. Every resurrection, every becoming who they're meant to be next, unfolds like time-lapse footage of a flower blooming. They would rather die 1,000 glorious deaths than live one safe, unchanging life. There is a raw, unrestrainable, animalistic hunger that devours and seeks to swallow them whole, all while loving them in utter, aching reverence. It is the paradox that lives at the center of every mythic bond, a force that wants to consume and consecrate in the same breath. This is the part of love that polite society doesn't discuss, the part that makes poets sound unhinged and lovers sound obsessed, the part that lives beneath the surface of nice dinner conversations and social media captions about partnership and growth. This hunger is not violence. It is recognition in its most primitive form. A knowing that arrives before language, before logic, before the gentle manners we dress ourselves in. Something ancient that stirs when you look at them. Something that predates civilization and its rules about appropriate levels of attachment. Something that bypasses your prefrontal cortex entirely and speaks directly from your DNA. It rises from the marrow like an ancient instinct. You feel it in your bones before you feel it in your thoughts. A pull so strong it almost frightens you. A need so intense it seems disproportionate. A wanting that feels like it could crack you open if you let it reach its full force, urging you to pull the other person close enough that the distance between souls collapses into a single lantern of heat. Because separation feels unbearable, not in a codependent way, but in a magnetic way, like your iron and their lodestone. And the space between you creates tension that needs resolution. You want to be close enough to feel their heartbeat, close enough that breathing becomes synchronized, close enough that you forget where you end and they begin. Yet reverence kneels beside it. And this is the miracle. This is what transforms hunger from consumption into something sacred. Because alongside this raw want lives a trembling devotion that never wants to harm, only to honor. A tenderness so profound, it makes you gentle even when the hunger makes you desperate. A respect so deep, it makes you careful even when desire makes you reckless. A recognition of their sovereignty even while craving their surrender. It worships the curve of their existence, the specific shape their life has taken, the path that led them to you, the wounds that made them who they are, the joys that taught them how to laugh. Every detail, every history, every scar and celebration that contributed to the exact person you're kneeling before. The fragile miracle of their being alive in the same timeline as you. This realization stops you cold sometimes, the sheer improbability of it, that they exist at all, that you exist at all, that somehow, against impossible odds, you found each other in a universe of 8 billion people, that you were born in the right decade, the right country, the right circumstances to cross paths. It places them on an altar built of pulse and breath. Your devotion isn't abstract or theoretical. It's embodied, physical, made of real things, heartbeats and oxygen, and the heat that generates between two bodies that want each other. The altar isn't in some distant temple. It's here, in the mess of actual life, in the reality of skin and need and presence, even while craving every inch of their nearness. You want to know them. Biblically, yes, but also geographically, historically, psychologically. You want to map every inch of their body and mind. You want to know what their knee feels like behind your hand. You want to know what memory makes them flinch. You want to catalog every freckle and scar and the story behind each one. This is polarity at its finest, the tension between opposing forces that creates electricity, the contradiction that generates heat. You cannot have one without the other. The hunger requires the reverence to keep it sacred, and the reverence requires the hunger to keep it alive. A desire so fierce it could tear the sky open. This is not gentle yearning. This is not soft wanting. This is the kind of desire that makes you understand why ancient peoples thought passion was divine possession, why myths are full of love that moves mountains and stops time and makes mortals challenge gods. Braided with a tenderness so gentle it could teach the moon how to glow. But woven through that fierce desire is a softness that would never force, never push, never take what isn't offered freely. A gentleness that touches like you're handling something holy. A care that makes you more careful, not less, because you recognize the preciousness of what you're being trusted to hold. A hunger that wants to taste every part of them, their joy and their sorrow, their strength and their weakness, their light and their shadow. You want to consume their stories, devour their secrets, swallow their truths, not to possess them, but to know them, to be nourished by the full reality of who they are. And a reverence that wants to bless, to honor them not despite their flaws, but including them, to recognize the divine in the human, to see them as they are, imperfect, struggling, still becoming, and treat them with the kind of care usually reserved for sacred objects. To love someone in this way is to live inside a beautiful tension. Every day is a dance between pulling closer and honoring space, between expressing hunger and practicing restraint, between wanting everything and respecting boundaries. The tension never fully resolves, and that's what keeps the love alive. A heat that never quite cools. Because this kind of love doesn't settle into comfortable predictability. It doesn't flatten into routine or fade into habit. Years in, you still feel that pull, that hunger, that sense that you could never get quite close enough. Know them quite fully enough. Love them quite completely enough. A devotion that never quite loosens its hands. You never fully relax into taking them for granted. You never stop being amazed that they're yours, that they chose you, that they stay. Your grip on the miracle of them never becomes casual. You hold on with reverence, even in the mundane moments, even in the difficult seasons, even when love becomes work. This is the paradox of sacred hunger. It is both the most selfish and most selfless thing you'll ever feel. Selfish because you want them with an intensity that almost embarrasses you, because you think about them constantly, because you want more of their time, more of their attention, more of their everything. Selfless because you'd do anything to protect them, because their happiness matters more than your own. because you'd suffer any pain if it meant sparing them from suffering it instead. It is appetite and altar, consumption and consecration, taking and giving, keeping and releasing. It is loving someone with the kind of intensity that scares you because you know that a love this big can hurt you in proportion to its size, that the depth of your hunger is matched exactly by the depth of your vulnerability. But you do it anyway, because a heart that knows how to feel sacred hunger is a heart that knows how to be fully alive. And being fully alive, even with all its terrible beauty, is better than being safely numb.
In the end, these three truths weave together into a single understanding. You want the world distilled into one person because your capacity for depth exceeds your capacity for breadth. You're not built for shallow connections with many. You're built for profound connection with one. You're willing to die glorious deaths because transformation is the price of the love you seek. You can't love at this depth and remain who you were. Every new love requires a new you. You live inside sacred hunger because the love you want is not tame or safe or reasonable. It's a beautiful paradox of wanting to devour and wanting to worship, and somehow doing both simultaneously. This is not the love of greeting cards or romantic comedies. This is not love that makes sense to observers or fits neatly into social expectations. This is mythic love, the kind that changes you, the kind that costs everything, the kind that people write about centuries later because everyone who experienced it knew they were living inside something rare.
And here's what you learn after you've wanted this kind of love for long enough. Not everyone is capable of it. Not everyone wants it. Not everyone understands why you'd choose intensity over ease, depth over breadth, transformation over stability. But the ones who do understand, the ones who also want the world distilled, who also die glorious deaths, who also live inside sacred hunger, those rare souls recognize you immediately. It's not subtle. It's not a slow realization. It's recognition at first sight, first conversation, first touch. Because you're speaking the same language. The language of people who refuse to love halfway. The language of people who'd rather burn bright and risk burnout than glow dimly forever. The language of people who understand that the opposite of love isn't hate. It's safety. And you didn't come here to be safe. You came here to feel everything, to love with the kind of intensity that makes you understand why people write songs and poems and novels trying to capture even a fraction of what it feels like. You came here to find the person who contains worlds, to die and be reborn in their arms, to live inside the beautiful tension of sacred hunger. And when you find them, or when they find you, you'll know. Not because it's easy, but because it's right. Not because it makes sense, but because it makes you. Not because it's safe, but because it's sacred. This is the love you've been waiting for. Not the love you deserve. That phrase has always been nonsense, as if love is earned through good behavior. But the love you've been preparing for, with every glorious death, with every refusal to settle, with every time you chose to keep your heart open even when closing it would hurt less. The love that matches your capacity, your depth, your sacred hunger. The love that doesn't ask you to be less so others can be comfortable, but invites you to be more, infinitely more. This is the love worth dying for. This is the love worth being reborn for. This is the love worth choosing over and over in 1,000 small moments and 1,000 glorious transformations. This is the paradox with a heartbeat, and it's been beating inside you all along.